Welcome to today's episode of the SDSS podcast, where we delve into the intriguing world of stop doing stupid stuff. Join your hosts, Keefe and Andreas Wieman, as they navigate the evolving landscape of generative AI. Today, they'll be discussing its potential impacts, exploring foundational strategies for integrating this technology into business practices, and debating how it compares to previous technological advancements like IVR and SMS texting. Whether you're a tech enthusiast, a business leader, or someone curious about the future of AI, this conversation promises to shed light on the art of the possible in generative AI. Settle in for an engaging discussion full of insights and professional guidance on one of the most promising frontiers in technology.
Hey everybody, this is Tim Keefe and Andreas Wieman, and we're here for another SDSS podcast, and that is Stop Doing Stupid. You fill in the S whichever way you want. But welcome again, and hopefully you can enjoy spending a few minutes with us today. So Andreas, what are we going to be talking about today, since I can get some coffee in me here?
Yeah, that was my cue to take 2 to 3 minutes to tee this up. I like it. I don't know. I thought a good topic would be, something that no one's talked about yet, which is generative AI. It's kind of a taboo.
And nobody's talked about it except it's 30, 40 times a day.
Yeah, it's not hit that quota yet, but no, I think it would be a good subject to help our listeners, like give them a guide on where to start. I think a lot of the companies that we talk to everybody's excited. And the good thing is everybody's excited. It's not like, remember when IVR was like the new kid on the block and like, oh, we can have an IVR. Like there wasn't really a lot of excitement around it, frankly.
That was before you were born. I'm sorry. Let's not even go there. But yes, it was a different time. Definitely a different time and different understanding of the technology.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, it was solid. Like it had potential, right? And just like I think there's some other technologies like SMS texting, for example, has a lot more opportunities and potential than it's being leveraged for. I kind of see Gen AI as being the same way. Now, SMS was different because there's more personal communication, but I think personal communication and on the business side of things with Gen AI, the capabilities or possibilities is a way that I kind of mentally look at it. Pretty exciting, and I do think there's good positive buzz out there. I'm not a huge fan of this saying, but the art of the possible. I think there is a lot of people that are getting excited about it and seeing where can they apply it. Theoretically, where can they apply it?
Right.
Well, it's just like anything else. And if it's a theory, it's just an idea. You could go do something with it. And I think, what you and I have been talking about with clients is how do we set them on the right track to be pragmatic and practical about how they should be thinking about where to start to build the foundation? Because one thing I can 100% tell you, if you're going to leverage Gen AI, it's going to be built on large language models. And the foundation for those large language models has to be rock solid. And it's not a just set and forget. You do it once. It's a continual hygienic process, right? So anyways, I think that's what we should talk about today. I just came up on the spot.
No, I think you're right on, and that this concept of it's a new technology, right? So generative AI is very cool. Everybody's talking about it. In some cases, companies feel that they have to have a response, whether it's because their board is asking me or their public is, their investors are asking. Not so much the public sometimes, but so one of the things, to your point, so we, again, whether we were talking IVR or we're just talking staffing in a contact center, a lot of times it's like companies would be like, we want to engage with our customers. Absolutely. And especially when it comes to sales, we want to make sure that we respond in a timely fashion. We sell the right product to the right customer, and we have a sticky sale. So conversion rates, stickiness of the sale, those are very real and very measurable. On the service side, equally important, though sometimes can be a challenge because many companies look at the service side of the house as that's a cost of doing business, right? It's not revenue generating. So it's like, well, how do we squeeze, do what we have to do, right? We've been there, and particularly utilities, they were horrible at this. And that's why we got into this whole service level requirements that were imposed on utilities, which is, 80% of calls have to be answered within 30 seconds. because in some cases that would never get answered, or you'd have 3 people on to answer service calls and 400 people to answer sales calls. But I guess first thing is, right, you want to engage with your customers. Great. Okay, what is it you hope to have come out of those contacts? What are the criteria of success for you? Well, on sales, pretty straightforward. I want to qualify and convert the sale. On the service side, okay, what do I want to do? Well, probably the number one thing I want to do is I want to maintain my revenue stream. I want to reduce customer attrition. So what are the things that accomplish that? And so I think this is where now technology gets interesting. So you can say, okay, if I can bring in generative AI and I can still respond to my customers quickly, personally, and maybe more digitally, because that's what customers really want. And we hear this over and over again. So that idea of like, I want to engage with them quickly, proactively, personally and digitally. And then I want to give them the right information so that they get what they need. And so I'm particularly talking about service at this point. So traditionally, you and I would sit there if we came in, or we were doing this internally, we do a big frequency distribution analysis of intents, right? Or what were the called distribution codes that were associated with contacts. And we would use that and say, okay, 25% of our calls were password reset, for example. And you go, great, let's go solve the password reset problem. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that now. It's gotten much easier. Technology has advanced quite a bit. In fact, we had a big financial services client probably in 2018, that we did an analysis of their IVR to say what would be the things that they could really leverage solving in their IVR that would make their customers happy and reduce their cost to serve. And the number one issue was, guess what? Password resets. So, you start with that. And then to your point, today is that data really the first place to go? Because the unfortunate part about that kind of that analysis was underneath the covers, it looks like data, but it's not really data. It's an opinion offered, captured in a very small fragment of time by an agent who is required to check a box that says, what was the reason for the customer's contact? And let's face it, people are people. Sometimes they would just pick the top box, or they would just, pick the same box that they've been picking over and over again. Password reset. Maybe that wasn't the primary reason for the call. Maybe it wasn't any reason for the call. So getting at real data, I think, is number one. And that's where actually a great place to bring Gen AI into the mix, to start looking at that unstructured data, as you were talking about in the beginning. What is your large language model going to be built on? Which is, right. I think you got to start with, what are your customers engaging with you about?
Well, sorry, just real quick on that, on the scenario you just gave right there, you're spot on with it. And this is where I think a lot of, because I'm in, I guess, free advice mode right now. So a lot of companies, they invest millions, tens of millions of dollars doing like IT modernization is what I would group this through. It's all IT to me. You can call it whatever you want. It's freaking software and hardware. It's IT. So IT and tools, they spend lots of money, and then they get kind of upset when they're not seeing a measurable ROI on it. So exactly what Tim just said is, think about it like this. First and foremost, when you're looking at Gen AI, don't look at it as a single use case. Don't look at it as we can make money from customers on this. You can. I'm not saying that's not true. You can, but don't look at it as solely as a customer facing tool. Look at it as a internal facing augmenter, like a flywheel for your employees, making their job that much easier, giving them the information just like you would be giving your clients, your customers, the information. So look at it that way. And then getting to what Tim just said about the data. Yes, when you go through an IVR, a lot of people like me would just say, you know what, I've tried to go through the website, I've tried to go through chat, I haven't got the answer that I need. Now I have to talk to a live person. I'm hitting 0. I don't care what the option is. I know that's usually the one that defaults me to a human first, right? And so when I get there, if you go back and look at, okay, well, how many customers just hit 0? Okay, well, 52% out of the 9 menu options we gave them were zeros. all right, you're not going to really draw a solid conclusion from that. You're going to have to go another level deeper and looking at, okay, well, of the people that hit zero, how can we subset that group and see
Right.
what did they actually do? And to your point, you're asking, okay, well, how was it classified in a CRM by the agent? But you're getting on this human documentation dependency when this poor person, by the way, that I'm talking to, the agent in this case, the company's probably asked them like a million process adherence cues that they've got to hit. They've got to say this disclaimer. They got to read this script. They got to go navigate to this antiquated, unhygienic knowledge base article to make sure they're doing the right process steps. It's a pretty stressful job. Like straight up, it's a pretty stressful job. If you've never done it, you're probably thinking, oh, they just sit around and wait for my one call, my one chat, my one SMS or whatever. No, that's further from the truth. So it is a very complicated, stressful,
Right.
expensive job. So what can you do to subset this data and get more reliable, insight on where you need to point your efforts towards? I'm just going to generically call it efforts because you got human intelligence that's going to come in and assess this. And then you've got obviously the opportunity to grab unstructured data, structure it, and make it usable to help you with this exercise. That's really what I get excited about Gen AI with. And so in this scenario you just described, could you simply look at how many actual password resets did we log in the system? How many did we actually perform? Okay, what was the numerator for, or the denominator for the number of actual interactions that either that one person took or that one group took or that
Right.
one whoever took?
Right.
But get to finitely measured data that points you in the right direction of where you need to solve the
Right.
problem, not just say, hey, Tim, I want you to, scribble down on a scratch sheet today all the different contacts you take and let me know what they are.
Well,
Anyway, sorry, that was a long point, but I thought
no,
it was kind of important.
but we've been there, right? Like, oh, the tool doesn't do it. So would you mind keeping a paper tally sheet on your desk and blah, blah, blah. And, you kind of go, and you expect the agents to document things well in notes, in ways that are, quote, searchable later or mineable.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I think, I guess to my point earlier, I was like, one of the initial use cases I think of Gen AI is taking, which are usually 100% recorded, and nowadays almost 100% recorded and transcribed customer contacts that are sitting there. And you tell me all the time, there's this huge gold mine in most companies of customer interaction data that nobody does anything with. Well, here's the first thing you can do with it. Run it against a Gen AI tool and start having a Gen AI tool do the note-taking. I mean, many of us have been using, on our calls, business calls now, we use all kinds of AI note-taking tools that are great, right? They do it better than note-taking than I ever could. And, well, geez, maybe I should apply that to, because very seldom does a customer call about one thing. They often may have a primary intent, but they may have secondary intents, et cetera. They also have some eventing that they want to do about products or services that you want to capture as well. Okay, so step one, I think going back to what we're trying to do here is say, take the data, take the interaction information that you have, and use better tools than just relying on the human interpretation of a tired person trying to get something done while they move on to the other 30 calls an hour that they have to answer. And then now, what do I have, right? Hopefully now I have a better understanding of what customers are contacting us about, what they're hoping to get from it, and what did we do about it, which are not necessarily all the same thing. And then to your point, then we can start breaking it down into, okay, here are, as consultants would say, things fall into a couple of big buckets of things. There are general information contacts, which hopefully are fewer and fewer, but I still see them all the time. Hours of operations, what products are available, those types of things. And then you have transactional contacts, which could be, I want to place an order, I want to change an order, I want to cancel an order, an appointment, fill in a blank. And I'm, again, primarily focused on service contacts here, but this could be a purchase as well, as I mentioned, order. And then, okay, as I look at those, how can I break them down into the solution set that's associated with them? How complex is it to get to the answer to the question or address the request? And then actually the last group I want to forget is the consultative contact, which is where the human beings are really valuable because they help the customer really interpret what they're looking at and make the decision, hopefully that's best for the customer, and results in either a sales or a satisfied service experience. So step one is, as you mentioned, what is your data set? And what do you have available in your data set? So that's a first place to maybe apply a Gen AI tool. Second set is, what are the contacts and what's the solution set associated with the contacts? And then as I start looking at that solution set, how the ones that are simplest, most easily achievable. In other words, oh, I want to do a password reset. Nowadays, the most common answer to a password reset is we will send a password reset link to your email of record or to some secure mechanism to communicate with you. And so many times if people are have an app, then they're doing in-app communication where they're authenticated and is secure, then I can send you the link there. But of course, if you can't log in, then you can't get to it. So I'm going to send it to your email of record, and probably in the high numbers of percentiles, 80% or more, depending on your environment, that's probably going to address the issue. Customer is going to get the link, you're going to be able to go in and do the reset, and they move on with their day. No need actually for human interaction there. If there's now, if for some reason the customer has changed their email or the email is corrupted or whatever, then they may have to engage with a human being to do it. But that should be a much smaller percentage of times, et cetera. And I think that's where you start with. So what's the data set? What can you extract from that data? And not, again, just, not just from a standpoint of what box was ticked at the time, but actually doing an analysis of that, all of those transcribed engagements with your customers, and then breaking that down into what are the solution sets associated with it, how complex are they, how is that information available? So if it's, I'm going to go, in order to solve this problem, I know exactly where to go, and the information is readily available to support that. That to me is easy. Those are ones you want to go after and say, this is where I can either, insert a Gen AI tool, or even in the old days, a conditional logic IVR. If this, then give this information. Great. Then we have, go ahead.
No, I was agreeing. And I think,
what?
Here's the other thing too, that you and I joke about, maybe not necessarily on a live podcast like this, but whatever. Some people, and when I say people, I'm talking about pretty senior people in organizations. They chase the wrong thing. They chase the wrong problem. That's not even really a problem. And so when they implement, and usually these are pretty senior folks that have matrices organizations, a lot of people involved. So everybody's working on this, chasing this, what I call a phantom problem, and a red herring, I guess is the right expression, but I call them phantom problems. All of these people are focusing on fixing a phantom problem. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of time and money. And so when the outcome isn't achieved by the one, who set the direction off, there's oh, well, you guys did it wrong. You guys didn't execute properly. You didn't, when in reality, they didn't follow the steps that you just outlined in terms of qualifying it with data, right? They look at maybe, I listened to this one call. I called in to my company this morning, and this is the experience I got. And I don't think they understand the ripple effect that has on the whole organization when something like that is said. So my point is, before I be super long-winded, my point is, if you have transcriptions of your interactions, whether it's on the messaging side, the chat side, the email side, or even the voice side, the voice transcription, most of the NLUs and NLPs that are running on automated QA platforms right now, they have let's say 80 to 85% accuracy in transcribing both sides of the conversation, the live voice. That's pretty good. Because if you think about it, our business, well, I don't want to say our business, but the CX industry for, I don't know, past 25, 30 years has, we used to hook tape recorders up and record calls and then rewind it and then come back and listen to the whole freaking call. You don't have to do that now. You have a transcription there of every interaction, not,
Right.
1 hour of tape that I could fill up and that's it. So now you have not a scientifically valid sample size, I'm doing my air finger quotes, but you actually have a large data set. And when I talk about digital gold mine, this is what I'm talking about. You have all this data in here. Some companies spend, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars surveying customers for CSAT and NPS. And I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying you have what they really think and what they're talking about right then and there while they're in the heat of the moment for why they're reaching out to you. They're not reaching out to you because they have nothing better to do and they're super bored. Some people do that. Very, very small. 001. But they're reaching out because they have a genuine concern. They're taking time out of their day to do that.
Yeah.
Go look at the transcripts and then look at how your people are responding and then figure out, like, again, what Tim was saying about Gen AI. There's something called semantic parsing or largely semantic analysis. To put it plainly, you run a machine learning model of semantic parsing on top of all of your transcriptions, and it basically understands the machine. And IT folks or machine learning gurus are probably going to like come at me for this like very, very easy explanation, or wide explanation, I'll say. But semantic parsing can basically train the machine learning model of what the customer was intending and meant, what the agent that was responding to that customer meant, and they'll start forming an opinion. It's like teaching a small child the ins and outs of life, right? The things that your people, your humans are struggling with are the same things that you've got to teach. They can just learn a machine learning model, and that's going to make up and form the large language model that it's going to feed the generative AI interface, right? Whether it's customer facing, internal facing, that it needs to be taught all of this stuff. And so it can consume all of this data, but you usually have it sitting on top of unhygienic or unkept knowledge management systems or knowledge-based systems or PDF, articles that are outdated and things like that. And then, companies wonder why they can't actually productize or do something with Gen AI internally that's either customer facing or internal facing, because they've not kept up basic data hygienic practices on their systems, their databases, I'll say. And so that's why a lot of companies struggle to operationalize any of this technologies, because they're sitting back, letting their humans have to deal with this and figure all of this out. And they're putting all these conditions on them, which adds anxiety and stress, which impacts your decision making, right? And so now they're like, well, why can't we just drop Chat GPT on here and it talk to our customers? So I kind of summarized really quickly what a big part of the problem is, at least that I see in my experience. I'm sure there's lots of other things out there, but that's down the most thing that I see the most.
Yeah, well, and I think it's just like if you were implementing human beings, right? We wouldn't just, say, here's the process, Good luck with it. I'll come back in 5 years and see how you've been doing, which is literally what we did in IVR. Now you've got to put the same level of, reporting in place. Like you'd expect to see reports that say, what's the average time that my customers are engaging with my bots? Okay, maybe they're not human agents and I don't have an operational need to know that, but I do want to know what the outcomes were. I do want to know if customers were getting frustrated. I do want to know sentiment analysis that's associated with all of this. I do want to do follow-up, pulse checks with my customers to make sure that they are getting what they need. And so if I go back and I said, to our intent at the beginning was, what can we talk about this morning that would help somebody thinking about Gen AI and thinking about my sales and service environment and a way to implement it? I think you start with number one. What are you trying to do, right? Like, am I trying to improve my service results? And what does that mean? I love it when companies say we measure by NPS, and you just, and I wish we had the Bain people here who created the NPS score, and they would say NPS was never designed for and should not be used as an operational metric. However, it is what it is. So many companies do it, and it's at best a lagging indicator of how people are feeling about something. They're not very good at really getting at what happened, and what was the tactical thing that was done, and was the tactical thing appropriate in resolving the customer experience. Now, you do want to look at the emotional component of it, but you also want to look at what was asked for and were we able to do it. And that may be two different things, because the fact is that even though you solved the problem, the customer may be so pissed that there was a problem in the first place, it didn't matter.
Right.
Anyway, so what am I trying to do? How am I measuring that? So in other words, what does success look like? And I know this is very consultative, but is that success metric something that's really valuable that we can operate around? Okay, now what is my data set? This goes back to what you just mentioned a second ago. Like, we have all these recorded calls. In many cases, the calls have actually already been transcribed. Massive data. Great. That's where Gen AI can be really good. Have Gen AI tools then start to do the analysis around that to help break that down into intents and resolution activities. Great. Now I start to break that down into what are the intents and resolution activities that I can identify. And then those are the ones that I can start to implement with Gen AI first, right? Like, target that 15%, that Pareto rule. What's the 20% of my intents that represent 80% of my volumes, right? It's just like Amazon. Yeah. Amazon doesn't put every product in every warehouse. They put the products that are most likely to be sold in the warehouses that are closest to the markets that buy them, which is why you get next day delivery or same day delivery. So we want to do the same thing around why people are calling, and then, or why people are engaging with us as a vendor with their customers. Now that I've gotten a subset and I'm monitoring that, and I can see that I'm able to use Gen AI to respond to those customers for those intents, and I can identify those intents, or even proactively engage with those customers because we can see the fault or we can see the underlying issue, reach out to the customer without having them to contact you. Whoa, really crazy stuff. And oh, by the way, the bots are 7x24. And if I'm digital, I can do it in multiple languages. So I've expanded my hours of operations. I've expanded my language set to support those customers. And maybe now I'm proactive, personal and digital, and engaging with those customers for some subset of activities. Yay, that's a big win and very measurable. And then I can move to the next low-hanging fruit or the next achievable transaction type. Anyway, I know I just wanted to break that down into steps 1 through X. Let's keep going. And I think it was, the whole point of all of this is
I think it's good
getting there.
I think people are, hopefully you're taking away that you and I are both really, really passionate about it. And I think we've seen the potential with other tools that are out there, and we've, gotten some clients along of the path of realizing what the potential is there. But I think Gen AI is like next level. There's a lot of possibilities to do it, but I think everybody gets lost on where they start, and they try to, and I don't want to discourage thinking big, so hopefully this comes out the right way. They try to think too big on the first implementation, when in reality, what you need to do is exactly what Tim just outlined. Like, normally we would be charging consultancy fees and conversations and things like that, but start simple and start pragmatically. Go look at do exactly what Tim just said. I mean, I honestly, if I try to say it, I'm going to take 10 minutes to say it. He said it succinctly and very linearly. Go follow that advice. Start there and look at ways that you can practically apply, just forming your approach that you're going to take, and then figure out what are the tools that you need. A lot of times people go purchase the tools, companies go purchase the tools, and they try to fit a triangle shaped peg in a round hole. No, that's why a lot of resistance and a lot of frustration comes about in the IT space on how do you operationalize these tools and software. Go figure out what the real problem is, and then figure out what Lego blocks do you have to get that you don't already have to be able to solve the problem.
Well, and one final note is, and don't do fire and forget. You got to pay attention. Yep. You got to be monitoring. You got to be looking at the reporting and accuracy constantly, just as if those were human being agents. Your robotic agents have to be treated in many ways the same way. And this is where we see and then the finger pointing starts between, well, is it an IT problem? Is it an operational problem? And and then you've lost ownership and et cetera. So net, to your point, I think the sum of today is Gen AI is an amazing tool. It's here to stay. Let's be thinking about how to use it. I think start in a very practical way, be very clear on what you think success is, have a clear measure of success, understand your data set, get some early wins, find some things that are, appropriate and measurable, and then continually work at it. But, and again, I also think this is a new skill set for some organizations, because this is not data analytics, it's not data scientists, this is digital journeys. This is writing those conversations that engage your customers and get them to where they need to be, whether it's proactively or reactively.
Agreed. I don't know what else to add on to that. That's,
All right.
good.
All right, guys. Well, again, thanks so much for listening to us. If you have the opportunity, please subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. You have comments and other topics you'd like to hear us go on about. But again, we're all about the employee, we're all about the customer. And when you take care of both, you put yourself in a much better situation, whether it's for profitability in private sector or for successful programs and not-for-profit or government programs. Anyway, thanks again, Andreas. Thanks as usual for getting up early and hanging out with me for a bit of time, and really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, no, likewise. And, if you guys have questions about how you can practically implement Gen, reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help. Can't tell, we're both pretty passionate about it.
All right. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.